Breaking news, charges incoming for the officer involved in that deadly shooting in Minnesota this week. How much prison time she could be facing. President Biden announcing plans to, quote, end America's longest war. And new details today about the deadly shooting of a San Diegan inside the Capitol during the January 6th riots. ABC 10 News at 11 starts now.
ABC 10 News starts now with breaking news.
We do start with that breaking news out of Brooklyn Center, Minnesota. Prosecutors announcing plans to charge the officer involved in that deadly shooting earlier this week that sparked days of protest. And welcome, I'm Jim Patton. It's very good to have you with us. Today, a county prosecutor saying he plans to charge former officer Kim Potter with second-degree manslaughter. Potter fatally shot 20-year-old Dante Wright during a traffic stop, saying she mistakenly grabbed her gun instead of her taser. Well, that's sparking several nights of unrest in the area just miles away from where the Derek Chauvin trial is taking place. In the days since the shooting, Potter, the city's police chief, and the city manager have all submitted their resignations. Potter could still be fired instead, and now those manslaughter charges she's expected to face could mean up to 10 years in prison. Well, this all coming amid a renewed focus on police reform in San Diego. Earlier this week, Mayor Gloria announcing plans aimed at addressing inequities. It touches on a number of things: economic mobility, housing, and police reform. Well, here are some of the changes the mayor's office is proposing: limiting use of military-grade equipment and tear gas, limits on what are called pretextual stops, when an officer pulls someone over for a traffic violation but suspects them of some different crime, and a review on hiring practices as well. Today, a local group pushing the mayor to go further. In particular, they want the city and the SDPD to release data on officers with a history of use of force, which they claim could be used to prevent future abuses. Coming up at 11:30, we're going to talk to the chair of a different local group pushing for change about some of these proposed reforms and the changes local officials have made in the last year. Well, moments from now, we are expecting to hear from President Biden about his plan to withdraw troops from Afghanistan later this year. Yesterday, reports suggesting a drawdown will begin in the weeks ahead, and all troops will be pulled by September 11th, 20 years after 9/11. Well, that following up on a plan by the Trump administration to withdraw this year. In a preview of today's speech, Biden saying it's time to end America's longest war. And more breaking news. We are just learning the Capitol police officer who shot and killed an Ocean Beach resident during January's riots in Washington, D.C. will not be charged. U.S. Attorney's Office of the Department of Justice says there is not enough evidence to support a criminal prosecution in the death of Ashley Babbitt. Babbitt was shot after video showed her trying to climb through the shattered glass of one of the doors of the Capitol building. An emergency response team took Babbitt to a hospital where she later died. Overnight, FBI raids at homes in the City Heights neighborhood at as many as a dozen homes, and we're still working to find out what was suspected there to bring about this surprise raid. ABC 10 News anchor Mary McKenzie has the reaction from neighbors who awoke to those flashbangs overnight.
Oh, it was scary. Oh, yeah, it was scary, but the minute I knew that the FBI was identifying themselves, I had to tell you I wasn't quite as scared.
But this neighbor, whose face we agreed not to show, did lose hours of sleep last night, thanks to an FBI raid at this apartment building on Copeland Avenue, going down overnight.
It was exactly midnight. I was woken up by big booms, like boom sounds, like sonic booms. But I understand that this may be something called a flashbang.
Other addresses in the City Heights area where a 10 News breaking news tracker saw these raids happening included 35th, 41st, and 45th Streets. FBI personnel, some in uniform, tactical gear with weapons drawn. At the scene, those officers refused to comment, but we were at 4 of what we believe were potentially a dozen locations overnight and saw at least a dozen people detained, as well as items seized from those addresses. We also learned San Diego Fire Rescue had 6 ambulances assigned as a precaution, although we don't know yet if there were injuries associated with the raids. We reached out to the FBI today. They sent us a statement confirming that, along with law enforcement partners, they conducted court-authorized law enforcement activity. They referred us to the U.S. Attorney's Office for further information. A spokeswoman for that office told us information would be sent later today. We're also waiting to learn how many people were arrested, how many locations in total were raided overnight, as well as which agencies were involved alongside the FBI and what was recovered. Meanwhile, the neighbors are recovering from being startled awake and hearing helicopters overhead for hours.
Didn't get much sleep, scared the dog almost to death. And what was it? It was scary.
The pause on the Johnson & Johnson rollout raising some concerns about the impact that could have here in San Diego. Far more Moderna and Pfizer doses have been administered locally, but the J&J vaccine has been seen as a particularly good option for the homeless since it's only one dose. Local homeless advocates are now worried some of that are on the fence about this may avoid getting the shot altogether.
I'm not looking forward to it, but we're just going to have to get down and just have conversations with people every day and try and build the trust factor.
CDC is meeting today to discuss the next steps. The White House stressing this is a precautionary measure meant to boost confidence that vaccine safety is being taken seriously. So far, 6 people have reported developing blood clots after getting the J&J vaccine. That's out of nearly 7 million doses that have been administered. And this morning, a final send-off for the Bonhomme Richard, nearly a year after a fire erupted on the ship and burned for days in San Diego Harbor. Navy today officially decommissioning the ship. They held a ceremony before sending it off to a scrapyard. The damage caused by the fire deemed too much to repair. Dozens of sailors and civilians were treated for injuries as well. In an exclusive interview with ABC 10 News, Deputy Fire Chief Robert Sepulveda described the challenge they faced.
What I was feeling at the time was obviously that fear. I want to make sure that everybody's safe on scene. And I just wanted to make sure I had that command presence to be able to unify everybody.
In August, ABC 10 News was the first to report that the fire was being investigated as an arson, and the lead suspect is a Navy sailor. That's according to multiple sources with close ties to the NCIS. To date, the Navy will only confirm that the cause is still under investigation. Java Joe Musgrove is just hours away from returning to the mound for the first time since making history for the Padres. Fresh off the team's first ever no-hitter, San Diego native will look to get the Friars back on track against the Pirates. But before he takes the hill, ABC 10 News reporter Marie Cornell shows you the celebration today at his former high school, where his legacy is now cemented in foothiller lore.
Before the world knew him as Joe Musgrove, the Padre that made history, becoming the first player in the team's history to throw a no-hitter, those from Grossmont High School, where he graduated from, tells us there's so much more to this Friar.
He was a great athlete, a good student, respected by his peers and our staff.
That's Principal Daniel Barnes, who says Joe is a regular on campus. Right after spring training, he spent a day with their baseball team. Catcher Isaiah Gomez talks about how much that meant to the team.
Before a game, he sat and talked with us for a while, and it's really awesome to listen to him talk about the game because it's just different with him. And he ended up staying to watch our game, and it was pretty cool.
Weeks later, this happened in Texas, the moment Joe made history, becoming the first Padre to throw a no-hitter. While this was happening, the Padres were already creating plans to make a mural. Paul Jimenez is the artist.
Even as the no-hitter was happening, to get ready and get in our car, get our paint ready to go. And then the next morning we started.
Aside from this, the Padres also have plans to hold a ceremony celebrating the no-hitter before Friday night's game versus the Dodgers. Marie Cornell, ABC 10 News.